Wow, that's a dissatisfying end to some legacy characters.
Ooh, that's a hot mug, guy.
Hey guys, this is my review for The Thin Man, episode 15, Supernatural, season 9. This is the end of the Ghostfacers. This is the last episode they're in, ever, and it's a sad one. It's somewhat of amalgamation of a retread of Hell House, and then a very sad breakup and reflection on the brothers and their current relationship. I'm kind of on the fence about this one because I like the idea of it, and the idea of Supernatural going hard, sad on something is rare. We already had one moment with Kevin being killed, and that was a pretty hard moment, and it's showing that there can be some friction in that this is what is the possible outcome for the brothers in this element. And it also talks about like a true idea of people taking a caricature, a fixture of horror, of meta horror, and turning it into something real. And considering this is very much akin to Slender Man, and then there was that case that involved those girls and doing an act of violence for Slender Man, this has some interesting elements when you look at it from the outside in, looking into the past about it. But as an episode itself, it is kind of lacking. The villain aspect being the kind of the dollar store version of the Scream guys, and once again getting the better on the brothers, leading to the Ghostfacers having to save them, which I mean, I guess you could kind of see it coming, but I mean, all they really did is they just distracted the guys so they could then save the Ghostfacers and take down the dudes, which one point, Dean is cold-blooded when he kills that guy with the blade. Like, I know that the guy had gone around and killed other people, like, you know, he wasn't a murderer, but whoa, that was hard. And when you consider that this is a human villain in the show, the best example that most of us have for human villains of the show, obviously the Benders, and as well as Gordon Walker, who I know did turn into a vampire, but he was also a human villain for a good point of it, and everyone who was associated with him. So when you get these two bumpkins, like literal bumpkins, take down the brothers and also be able to orchestrate this whole thing. If I'm correct, when the girl who posted Slender Man behind her kills her, which, wait a minute. Now I'm cutting a bit because I actually had to stop and have a minute. There is no possible way that the kills are happening in this as they should be, because that in fact the person who's killing is going after people that have wronged him. Both means of how he kills his victims is exactly that of a supernatural being. Like when he's in the room with the girl, she runs into the cupboard. How did he get into the cupboard and close it, and then now he's in there with her without her noticing like that at all? And then the same for the diner, the guy getting in and then he just comes in. Like, I don't know. It is an attempt to try and falsehood a supposed supernatural entity with a human entity kind of twist, but the more you think about it, the dumber it is. Like I said, I really do not like the villain aspect of this episode. The whole Thin Man thing really does blow. The Ghostfacers thing, while sad, is actually kind of a strong point where there are times where we have people who we call friends who are holding us back, who are dead weights. That is something that happens with this episode. And the fact that it's never resolved is kind of bonkers. Maybe they just never brought the guys back. But I'll have to admit, one of the dudes, like, he went on to the Navy SEAL show. Look at this photo. Look at this man. He's ripped. Damn, he was always kind of the portlier one. Now look at him, fucking ab machine here. So that might have been why they never brought him back, which I guess kind of makes sense, that just scheduling conflicts. But also maybe Dad just didn't want to bring the character back, as well maybe Carver just never wanted to bring the character back either. Because the Ghostfacers always had that weird sort of back and forth about them, whether you liked them or you didn't. They always had this kind of feeling to them, and we have seen more characters being introduced that have more lasting appeal than these characters did, unfortunately. Overall, while the villain aspect sucks and the whole Ghostfacer thing is pretty cold in terms of how it's ended, it's not the worst episode. It's not a bad episode. It's just not a good one, if that makes sense. So in the end, I'm going to give #ThinMan a 3 out of 7. But those are my thoughts about this episode. Let's see what you guys have to say.
I knew when Slender Man was happening, Supernatural would do an episode about it. This is not one of my favorite episodes of the series. Can agree there. Yeah, you know, it's funny, they didn't fully go into it either. Like, they just made it Thin Man. This episode is bad. Definitely one of the worst in this season. This is the final episode to feature the Ghostfacers. I'm really not a fan of Ed and Harry. I get that the show was trying to do something comparing the conflict between them and Sam and Dean, but it didn't work. I'm still surprised Dab never brought them back. In his era, would have worked well, especially with how it would have been interesting to learn if Ed and Harry had ever mended their relationship. You know what? That actually is a good point. That's kind of interesting that we didn't, and it would have worked more into the silliness that was the Dab era, I feel. I don't like the Dab era, but it could have worked. And yeah, there is the parallel to it with the brothers, and it works in some ways. In other ways, it's extremely heavy-handed. The worst retcon Andrew Dabb did in the latter seasons is that the ghost can't go to heaven. That means ghosts in the Vale simply can't go into heaven even when the gates are reopened. So all these ghosts should end up going to hell when they move or get hunted. Oh. Wait, so this is never resolved? Or no, wait, what? Oh, is that the whole crap? Was that what the crap that they did with season, like the beginning of season 15? Maybe explain that a little bit more. Before the British Men of Letters, Thin Man would be the 4th episode where the humans were the main villains in the episode. Yeah, that's true. But the reason I love this episode, if someone, he has a positive. I love this episode is because the episode really hammers in how lying destroys relationships. Too bad it's a reoccurring scab healing point that leaves fans scarred for the show overall, let alone it's annoying how it has such a big plot point in other CW shows. I can see how a lot of fans would roll their eyes when they see the only 2 other members of the Ghostfacers are back to really tie into Sam and Dean's current family drama. Admittedly, it is pretty kind of cringy in some points. One thing that really works really well, though, is that in this episode, it's just how Ed and Harry act in the episode. It's absolute downer, but their dialogue really works. I especially love how Sam and Dean have a brotherly moment remembering the good times of their childhood. It also does very little foreshadowing of how the Mark of Cain starts to affect Dean. Even though the villains are a page from the Ghostfacers villains, I really enjoy the acting in this episode. Yeah, I wouldn't agree about the acting, but I do agree with what you're saying here in terms of that it shows that it's hard. Like, it shows that they don't fix it. It's a pre-telling of what could happen. Admittedly, it is, of course, a story beat that we've seen a billion times in Supernatural at this point, and we would see it again and again afterwards. But I do like how it didn't end positively, and maybe that's why they didn't bring it back, because they're like, oh, like, we're gonna have at least one lesson from this damn show. This might be my most hated episode of the season. I'd be surprised if it doesn't make your top 5, or at least a dishonorable mention. I never liked the Ghostfacers. I was never a fan of the Slenderman craze, and I'm sick to death of the brothers' feud. That's the short version of why I hate this episode. So the Ghostfacers are meant to parallel the brothers' current situation, but it just feels lazy. First, Ed tricking Harry into leaving his girlfriend is not only to someone to mirror Dean tricking Sam into being possessed by an angel, but it also is supposed to be the same as the pilot when Dean got Sam to leave Jess and Stanford, implying Dean is responsible for Sam not having a normal life with his girlfriend, just like Ed did to Harry. I mean, that might be a little bit of a reach, but I can see where you're kind of coming from there. They've tried this before in season 7 with Osiris, and the logic is just ridiculous. Jess would have died regardless if Dean had shown up, and Sam's normal life was never going to last. The demons would have made sure of that. Also, yeah, we can criticize Dean's choice, but it was a life or death situation, unlike Ed and Harry, who are just, that's just Harry or Ed being just a complete dick. The biggest eye roll is when Sam said secrets to story relationships and trust, referring to both Ed and Dean, and that would be some weight if it had not seen the brothers keep several secrets from each other and found ways to move past it. In a way, I guess, yeah. I can see where they're kind of coming from, though, because I'm imagining this from, like, not season 9 onwards. Like, it was getting irritating at this point, but it wasn't as irritating as it would get. And if things where the brothers were so broken, like between the Ghostfacers, why the heck were they separated? It would be so much more interesting if they were apart. I'm so sick of Dean needing to be saved in nearly every episode. Yeah, the brothers need saving sometimes, but Sam has barely done anything to save himself. At least this time, they had Harry save him instead of Dean. You are right about that. Sam has nearly died so many times in this season, and he, technically speaking, he did die a couple of times, but Galadriel saved him last minute. You might point out that Sam saved Dean last episode, till you remember that it was only because he had to escape because of Miss Tran, and that Dean had kicked and knocked out over the demon before he could see Sam at the door. It was more of a team effort rather than a solo Sam effort. I usually enjoy filler episodes, but I'm so sick of these four. The brothers feud doesn't make anything feel fun, and the fact that it's a stagnant state is just boring.
All right, guys, thank you for your comments. Now we're moving into Blade Runners. Now, admittedly, Blade Runner is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I don't initially remember this episode. So I'm very curious as to how they're going to use that, but we'll see. I've been surprised by this show before. But as always, let me know what you guys think about that episode in the comments below, and I'll read those off in the next review. And until then, I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, leave a like, and if you're interested in more, subscribe. If you want to join the Discord, link is in the description below. And with that, I'll see you guys next week.